Hello, welcome to Soulprint Intuitive Tarot. My name is Cindy. You're going to be seeing this on March 4th. I am recording this actually the evening of March 3rd. So it's just after 9 o'clock my time, 9 o'clock p.m. my time, Mountain Standard Time. So before I get started, I just kind of want to share a story with you. So shortly after Trump got elected to office, I have a very, very dear girlfriend of mine, kind of, one of those sisters by other mothers kind of girlfriend. And she would call me and she would say, I have a question. And then I would just talk to her. And it was always about what Trump was doing or not doing or what the problem was or whatever. And then I would just sort of tell her what I could intuitively sense and pick up. And we did that for a few months. And then finally she said, Cindy, what you're saying tends to always happen. And so maybe you should consider, maybe doing a YouTube channel or something so that the people, so that you're telling more than me, basically. And so for those of you who have ever been curious about why I start my reading kind of with I have a question, it's sort of in honor of Michelle. So tonight, Michelle called and said, I have a question. And so I'm going to answer some of her questions. So the first one was she wanted to know if any country is going to step up and help the Ukraine, like with military boots on the ground. Apparently, also, while I'm looking at that, I'm also going to be looking at this other sort of sub question, which is apparently Zelensky has said that he now wants to have a face-to-face meeting with the guy, because he just keeps doubling down and doubling down. You've got a nuclear plant with a fire going on now. As of now, right now, when I just checked the news, there are no high radiation levels as a result of that fire burning in that nuclear plant. So let's all just take a moment and say, thank God. So, but she wanted to know if that would actually be safe for him. Like, is that something that he should even remotely consider doing? And although God knows in the last 5 days or however long it's been, we certainly have found out that this is a man who is brave and dedicated and determined. So I have a question. Come on down. Okay, so I'm just gonna, I think what I'm gonna do is I'm broadly gonna ask just about the leaders of these two countries and what sort of where we're at. So let's start there. So Ukrainian Russian leaders. Let's see what the cards have to say about that. Now, I do have to tell you intuitively, I have very little faith that the Russian leader is going to agree to that sort of a face-to-face. But let's see what the cards want to tell us. Yeah. Okay, so let's just start with this. The wannabes are just, in one of my more recent videos, I said that when I stepped into his energy, it was as if his blood was literally boiling inside. I didn't mean it, I kind of meant it literally. It just feels like he's just enraged. He just had no idea that he would end up in a position where he had to defend himself and where the whole world is saying, step away. This is nuts what you're doing. I mean, all kinds of people who were his people, his guys, whether it was the last prime minister of or president or whatever they are in Ukraine, it was, even he apparently has come out now and said, listen, enough is enough. You need to pull back and stop this. So he is enraged because not only is he getting all of this pushback from what he considers those Ukrainian peasants, um, but in many ways, this whole thing is backfiring. That's part of the reason that you see this real escalation and this real ramping up. Unfortunately, since 2016, we have all become familiar with the phrase and behavior of doubling down, and that's exactly what's going on with him. Except he's sort of tripling down and quadrupling down. But he cannot sustain this. This is what I want you to realize. He is not going to be able to sustain um, the rage, the pushback. And what is happening is more and more people are abandoning him. Whether it is his own military who are surrendering quite willingly, um, because they just don't want to fight, their brothers in that country that is their neighbor. Whether they are, sabotaging their vehicles. Um, and by the way, kudos to that farmer who was like literally hooking up tanks and whatever else and like just towing it away. There was a really funny video of the soldier running after the farmer with his tractor and this piece of equipment, trying to reclaim it. So sorry, I digress for a second, but what I'm saying is they don't want to be there. By and large, they do not want to be there. And so there is there will continue to be help. There will continue to be a ratcheting up of sanctions. There will continue to be very, very strong penalties put in place. I think for right now, what you are seeing is you are seeing ex-military people from around the world who are not in active duty, who are making their way into Ukraine to help fight with the Ukrainian soldiers and the Ukrainian people. And you're going to continue to see that. Now, listen, that I think there's like 1,000 or something at this point. Now, that's not the same as a country sending over 5,000 or 10,000, but for right now, between the help that is coming and the soldiers that are just abandoning them, um, that sort of, now remember what I said, that if we could get to Friday or Saturday, things would start calming down a little bit. And I still am feeling that energy. Um, but I have also said repeatedly that March was going to be a difficult and bloody month. You know, there's not a pretty way to say that. It's going to be difficult. As of right now, what I see is, for the most part, countries, I think any talk that goes on kind of behind closed doors about, should we send troops and et cetera, there is sort of an awareness that doing that literally means that you have now declared war on Russia. And there is still enough faint-hearted politicians who really, really don't want to find themselves in that position. So for now, the unfortunate answer appears to be no. I don't see governments sending in troops. I see them sending in all kinds of other stuff. Humanitarian aid, sending in machinery, equipment, guns, missiles, whatever needs to get there. They're also most countries have just sort of blasted open the doors when it comes to their immigration um, procedures, and they're really just trying to get as many Ukrainians out of Ukraine for right now. So that for right now, unfortunately, although you can't minimize that, okay, that's huge. And any of you who have just tootled off to the gas station in the last 24, 36 hours is dealing with, increased gas prices. And um, one of my daughters was complaining about it the other day. And all I said to her was, just consider this your contribution to Russia. Um, so yeah, we're also getting hit in the pocket, but certainly not the way the Russians are getting hit because of the idiocy of that person who is an egomaniac. Frankly, I was going to say leads them, but he doesn't. He just cares about what he can have. So for right now, that unfortunately looks like the answer, but there's going to continue to be talk. Okay, people, nobody is backing away from this, and nobody is going to forget about this. It's too big and it's way too dangerous. I mean, when you have shelling going on around nuclear plants, and apparently the one that they were going after today is apparently like the largest nuclear plant in Europe. Okay, this is not going to be a 2 or 3 day story. This is going to go on and on. And so there's continuing um, conversations going on. There's continuing meetings, lots and lots of which we don't know about. I have to say at this point, I don't believe, I'm not seeing that he is going to, the wannabe czar, I'm not seeing that he is actually going to agree to um, meet Zelensky. And how brave is that, right? Trying to set up an appointment to meet with the guy who actually a few days ago hired a hit on you. I mean, um, but should that happen, it's not going to happen in Russia. I imagine they're going to pick another country. And I don't know, maybe at that point, Putin's going to have to climb out of his bunker where he's safe and, come out into the real world. But literally that then becomes very dangerous for him, frankly. Um, and not that I'm saying, one way or the other, whether I think that's a good thing or not. But as of right now, I am not seeing him complying. See, Zelensky is still trying to approach him as if he is a reasonable, rational human being. The wannabe czar, on the other hand, is obsessing about money, how much money he has lost, how much, assets that are being frozen and seized, why there isn't enough funds to get supplies out to where they need to go. And so they're coming from two very, very, very different places. And so at this point, anyways, energetically, even if they did get together, um, never mind they're not on the same page, but listen up, they're reading two different books. Okay, so for right now I don't see that actually moving ahead. But you know what, you are being reminded that there is so much good that's happening right now. um, Energetically, there is so much light and love being sent to the people of Ukraine to try to sustain them. There is, all kinds of supplies, whether it's humanitarian or otherwise, that's being funneled. And it's interesting, of course, because if you look at the star card, you will see that the star card is the two colors of the Ukrainian flag. And I don't know, somehow that just seems very poignant today. So, like I've said, like Ukraine is not going to come out of this unbattered and bruised. It will, but the determination, and again, kudos to the Ukrainian people and Ukrainian leadership, but it is also globally. It is all the other countries who have jumped on board and said enough. This cannot go on, and we're going to continue to do everything we can. So that's sort of where that is at. Okay, so there's a lot going on behind the scenes that we don't know about. Um, so at some point, there's going to sort of be an assessment of how much has been lost and destroyed and devastated on Ukrainian land. But there is also going to be assessment from the other country about the power that he has lost and the prestige, if he presumed he had some. But he is also going to, at some point, and I want to say like within the next 7, 10, 14 days, where he is really going to start licking his wounds. Because right now he is angry. He is like red hot. But at some point, anger burns out. And what you were then left with is sort of a overwhelming sense of failure and depression. And I've already said that I don't think somehow or another that his health is very good. And so it just feels as if the stressors on his physical body, his mental state, are going to continue to increase with the rage. But at some point, it's sort of like they're showing me a balloon that gets pricked with a pin, right? It's just sort of self-deflating. Um, as near as I can figure and hope, this is going to rage through most of March. But it feels as if as we go forward, it's going to lighten up a little bit. It's somehow going to, there could be some ceasefires with this Four of Swords showing up here. It could be that there is more, how do I want to say this? It's more communication going on. And frankly, some of that communication is going to continue to be talk of sanctions, talk of punishments, talk of how you're going to basically pay for this because you had no business just deciding that you could take over a sovereign country. So that's sort of where that's at right now. I think that you may get some ceasefires. I think that a face-to-face meeting between those two leaders, I don't see that happening, certainly not in the next week. And like I say, if it does, they're not really they're sort of not really on the same page, right? Their motivation is very, very different for what they want and what they don't want, etc. Now, um, I hope I get this right because I jumped out here and I didn't actually take the time to look up her title. But if you have been watching sort of any of the news out of Canada, Kristen Freeland has been on the TV a lot. I'm pretty sure she is our deputy prime minister. I am not sure what portfolio she handles, but she certainly is kind of front and center when it comes to talking about this, talking about the sanctions, talking about strategies, etc. She's a really remarkable lady. She was a journalist. She was a spy. And apparently, you know who over across the ocean there hates her because she's wicked smart. And you're in the United States, your U.S. CIA, et cetera, et cetera. They know who she is. They've either worked with her, they know her by reputation, and apparently she is one of the ones that has put kind of the package together in terms of how this is going forward and sort of hitting Russia kind of where they're most vulnerable in terms of sanctions and that kind of thing. So I want to take a look quickly. I'm going to look at two countries, basically. I'm going to see if I can get a read on what, if anything, new Canada may be contributing. We have a very significant Ukrainian population in this country. It was many, not exclusively, but many of the Ukrainians, including my grandfather, who built the railway that moves across the country. I think my grandfather was part of the Alberta or BC leg of it. So there's a strong Ukrainian population out here. And the Ukrainians of this country have very high expectations for the Canadian government. Hold on, I'm going to see what fell on the floor. Does it surprise anyone that it was the tower that came flying out? So, um, as that happened, as I was talking about Freeland, the plan, the strategy is to literally bring down the country. She often uses the word suffocate when she's talking about their leader and those around him. That is the terminology she often uses. We are going to suffocate all his assets, his ability to get anything. We're removing it from him. So very interesting that came out. So let's take a look and see if there's something going on maybe behind the scenes within the Canadian government or the Canadian military. And then, of course, I'm going to take a look at the United States in the same way. So let's see what I can see. Ukraine, Canadian assistance, Ukraine, Canadian assistance, Ukraine, Canadian assistance. Okay. So interesting that the Ace of Wands, I think, was in exactly the same position in the reading I just did. In any case, so the relationship between Canada and the Ukraine is like a partnership. Okay, they are working jointly and together. There's very clear communication going on back and forth. They are doing what they can in an expedited way. They're moving things along very, very quickly. You have sort of, okay, so the Seven of Swords here is literally about what the wannabe czar is trying to steal. And this is what Canadians' official reaction to that is. It's they're going to bind him, they're going to blind him, they're going to close in on him, and the banks and the oligarchs and et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so there is continuing assessment going on. The people who are working on this, literally in Ottawa and other points across the country, they are working around the clock. This is not something that they have. Oh, look, and there's the Ace of Swords. I wonder if it was the Ace of Swords. Anyways, for those of you who have watched me for a long time, you've probably already heard me say that because so much of what I say is channeled, that I actually don't remember what I say. Like as soon as I say goodbye to you, almost all of it vanishes from my head. So that's why I'm not clear on what card was on the table like 2.5 minutes ago. But the assessing continues to go on, and it's interesting because there is really an attitude of almost the sky's the limit, all options are on the table, and let's sort of not quibble about money right now. So that's kind of where they're at. They continue to get pressure, though. They continue to get pressure to do more, to do more, to do more. And, I don't know. It's for right now, I have to say, I'm not, and this is sort of globally, I'm not seeing a country land with military in Ukraine because that means they have literally declared war on Russia. And because he is so unstable, no one's exactly quite sure what that could end up looking like. So for now, in this moment, it seems to be about supplying everything and anything that can be supplied that doesn't involve, the boots on the ground. But make no mistake, there is a very firm um, intention to continue to issue sanctions, continue to do whatever can be done, because this is a behavior that Canada and all the other democratic countries are saying this is so unacceptable. This is not going to stand. And if you know who doesn't actually end up DEA dead, um, he will eventually be charged with war crimes. The Hague has started the investigation, and it's nice because they've gone back and they're gathering information from 2013 forward. So that, of course, includes that the invasion of Crimea. So as of right now, Canada is doing everything they can except for, and there is a very strong resolve to continue to move forward. There is a great need to bring stabilization back to the world, to countries. Excuse me, Nova. Hey, could you please not chew on my computer? Ah. That's still chewing. Sorry. He's just being a bit of a boot. Aren't ya? Huh? Who's that? All right, so you're very cute. Stop. Don't eat it. Oh my goodness gracious. Okay, so that's not a lot, but that seems to be what I'm getting regarding Canada. Let's see what's going on with the United States, shall we? And again, Biden has been very, very clear that there are no circumstances in which they are going to put military boots on the ground in Ukraine. And all the countries feel the same way. Now, there's definitely, I wish I had my pendulum. I don't have it here, so I'll have to remember to ask for the next time. But for those of you who do have your pendulum handy, please ask this question and then send in the comment section the answers. I want to know if the UN is going to be able to really expedite getting Ukraine as part of the UN. And I also want to know if, as a result of what's going on right now, is NATO going to be able to do anything to bring Ukraine under the NATO wing or umbrella? And how fast can they do that? Certainly when this settles and is resolved, Ukraine and Switzerland and Finland and a whole bunch of other countries that were like, oh, well, it's fine. They're not, oh, no, it's fine anymore. And they will be joining NATO. It's fascinating, right? Despise the wannabe king, the wannabe king of Mar-a-Lago, and his attempts to completely obliterate and demolish and weaken NATO. In fact, this has strengthened NATO in a way that it hasn't been strong like this for a lot of years. Let's take a look at the United States, shall we? Come on down. I have a question. United States, Ukrainian assistance. United States, Ukrainian, and assistance. United States, Ukraine, and help. Look at my brain, eh? It's just wandered off somewhere. He's living in a happy little place that just doesn't happen to be right here, right now. Okay, so again, the Page of Wands, and that has showed up. There is the Tower, and there is the Nine of Wands. So that's not, and the Wheel of Fortune. And there's that Six of Cups that was just in. And you all saw how I enter the cards into the thing. So, when you have cards showing up consistently, there's a message there. It's not because they weren't shuffled properly. So there is very much, how can I say this? So let's just sort of do this sort of on a random kind of scale. So let's say from 1 to 10, in terms of how angry countries are with what who has done. So Canada is probably angry to the tune of 7.5 or 8. The United States is angry to the tune of 9 and 9.5, because this is more than just what he has just done with Ukraine. There is also a real anger and a real need to punish and make an example of all of the interference that took place, not only in 2016, but in 2020, and it continues. Although I don't know, you would think the czar, might be distracted by now, but anyways. So there is, again, that really strong desire to get this guy corralled and to change his fortunes in a way that he will never be able to go back to whatever it was he had or didn't have or wanted to have or thought he had. His fortunes literally are going to be very, very much diminished. And that is absolutely, absolutely the intent of the United States. It is to just literally bring this guy and his regime down. Okay, so that's sort of the mindset or the mentality that is going on behind closed doors with those people who are involved in the strategies, et cetera, when it comes to how they are helping and combating and doing what they can. There is going to be, I don't know if it's been voted on yet. I know that Biden was going to Congress and he wanted, I don't know what it was, $6 billion or something. That's going to go through, as far as I can tell. There might be a couple of people who vote against it, but we already know who their loyalty is with. So the money is going to continue to flow, but there is an awareness that it's kind of a weird sort of dichotomy, because as angry as the United States is, and as much as there is this really strong urge to punish this guy and put him in his place, it feels very much like a heavy lift. And maybe part of the reason for that is simply because you were in Afghanistan for 20 years. You've gotten kind of your soldiers back, etc. It's been a very short time, and now there's this other sort of war. And the American people, frankly, are exhausted. And so it feels as if to really try to go ahead and get actual forces on the ground would, at this point, would definitely be hard to do. Okay, it feels like it wouldn't be an easy thing to accomplish. There would be a lot of pushback on that at this time. It's also a heavy burden that the United States carries in terms of, as soon as all the crazy started happening, is it was like, well, what is the United States going to do? Everybody kind of is like, okay, well, you go first, and then we'll all fall in, behind you. And it's a hard place to be, but frankly, it was one of the things that Biden was. It was really important to him that he sort of bring um, NATO back to a place where they trusted the United States, and back to a place where leaders could talk and communicate with each other, and it was a strength building exercise. And boy, oh boy, if anybody questions whether Biden was the man for the job, if they're still questioning it, I can only ask, what more do you want? How much more proof do you need that this was the right man for the time? But he carries a lot of weight and pressure, because he's setting an example on one hand, but he also understands that um, they can't do sort of anything officially. It's sort of interesting, because I just kind of got a kind of a like a wink and a nod sort of message, like again, if you are not actively involved um, right now, if you're retired from the um, the Army, the Navy, what sorry, it's late and words are sort of not gelling in my head. Um, but anyways, um, it feels as if quietly there's some encouragement for people to independently, um, you know, do what they can and perhaps make their way east. Okay, and it also looks like um, somehow or another the United States is also expediting anything that can be done quickly, anything that they can open up. That is happening, and so I guess the answer to the question from the original question that Michelle asked was, is any country going to actually get more involved it doing what more than they are now? And the answer, certainly within the next 7-10 days, appears to be no. This is such a fluid situation. I wouldn't even think about trying to look beyond almost the immediate future with these kinds of questions, because everything um, is just fluid. It's so up in the air. But make no mistake, if that wannabe czar is foolish enough to um, try to go after one of the NATO countries, it is just, and this I think is part of this tower. The United States is fully prepared to obliterate. He wants it to be his legacy, that guy over there. And where he's at now is a place of incredible anxiety and paranoia. And in some ways, he's, I guess, lucid enough at some point to recognize that his legacy is being diminished. It's not being enhanced. It has to be difficult for people around the world to be openly questioning his mental health, his sanity, his ability to actually comprehend and understand what he is doing. That's got to be a hard thing for a man with that kind of ego. The United States is going to continue to stay as balanced as they can. But as this moves forward and things start to settle down, and they will, it feels as if there is going to be everything that can be done will be done. because they understand on a very basic level that Buddy is completely motivated by his legacy and by money and nothing else. And nothing else. And for those of you who are just wondering or curious, I will tell you that um, he's just so angry and raging. He's really sort of out of control a little bit. Um, and as of right now, the people in his closest inner circle, while they are sort of publicly saying this needs to stop, it needs to pull back, whatever, nobody is doing anything uh, when you're face to face with this guy or face to 40-foot face. And you gotta love that. Um, that's a hell of a big table, honest to God. But anyways, um, it doesn't feel as if those people are actually saying anything um, to him in terms of trying to get him to pull back. You know, a bunch of months ago, it was around the time of the last election, and I remember commenting that one had to wonder if Trump was actually being given any accurate information, or was he simply being fed the information that was going to keep him from basically shooting the messenger? And once again, it feels like that's a question that needs to be asked. Are the people closest to Putin, are they really giving him the straight goods? I don't know. Okay, it's Friday. Have a wonderful weekend. Thank you so much for being here, trusting me to do this. I hope I have brought you some clarity, some peace, some calmness. Have a wonderful weekend. The Pick Your Crystal reading will be up on Saturday morning. And until next week, take care. Be well. We'll see you really soon. Bye bye.